Hello, everyone. Got some weird problems here. My OBS updated and it disconnected me. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? That's the first thing. This is unbelievable. I can't believe I have to sign into my own thing. Yes, good. Okay, good. I'm having a weird thing happening here with the chat, so give me 1 second. Yeah, I got disconnected and didn't notice it till just now. Oh, come on, man. I hope that's right. This is good. This is good times. Here you are, and I'm signing into an account off screen. Good times. Google wants to make sure you're safe. So okay, fine. Just ask me the question, Google. There we go. Yes, it is me, in fact, trying to sign in. Yes, hard to believe. I know. Fantastic. Okay, good. This one. Are we in? Okay, I think we're good. Huzzah! And hello. So, thanks for joining me, everybody. There's lots of you today. Lots of members, lots of patrons, lots of subscribers. Welcome, one and all. I'm going to have a hard time keeping up with y'all. I'm used to talking to 5 people. So there's a lot of you now, and I've got a lot to cover because, of course, what we're doing here today is we are talking about the state of the Broken Empires, and it is a very good state indeed. And we are going to do a deep dive into the combat chapter. So I'm going to show you the combat chapter, possibly also the wounds chapter. These chapters are fully laid out. The only thing that isn't perfect is that all the art isn't quite in place. So we have some temporary art pieces in there. We're still waiting for commissions to come back and some things. But it is being we're in the middle of doing that. So I can tell you right now, there's a lot of you going to ask this question. We want news of the PDF. It's being worked on. Part of the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to show you a little proof of life. I want to show you exactly what the PDF and the book is going to look like. Here's the long and the short of it. This big book, 500 pages, something like 21 chapters, including appendices. And there's a lot to lay out. Now, what we had was, we had initially a design that we did. We laid out everything up to chapter 8. And then we had an issue with the design, various pieces of it. I won't get into it. It's just there was an issue that meant that we had to go back and fix. And we thought that the fix would be fairly cosmetic, but as it turns out, layout is a very finicky beast. If you wind up removing a paragraph from a chapter, that affects the entire chapter. It's ripple effects. So it's not just a matter of saying, oh, here's my text, I'm going to put a picture here, and there you go, it's done. No. You have to make sure that the layout is readable, is legible, is understandable, is well organized. You need to make sure that your font choices are correct. You need to make sure that the kerning between each letter is correct, or that the size of each letter is correct. You need to, the ornamentation that represent your callouts and example has to be correct. You have to make decisions about whether you're going to italicize, or whether you're going to capitalize, or whether you're going to bold, or whether you're going to do certain keywords or whatever. These are all the things that go into layout. So when people say, where's the book? I promise you, I did not have any idea or appreciate the level of work that goes into this stuff. So we had a big setback, but we are moving through it. We've hired 2 more layout design artists that are helping us with this, but they're not full-time, so they're going as fast as they can. So I appreciate that people are impatient, and that means that you're excited, and that's great, but understand, it will be done when it is done. I cannot give you a specific date, and I know a lot of you are going to freak out at that. Too bad, so sad. That's the way it is. That's the truth. I'm only giving you the truth. If I could, I would wave my magic wand and give it to you today. But I can tell you this, it is coming. And you're going to see a piece of it, and you're going to see the general sense and the general, the general atmosphere of the book. Because here's the thing. An RPG, I am absolutely convinced of this, is not just a set of rules. It is also the presentation. And I've said this before. I've said this before in videos. I've said this before in streams. When I first picked up Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay First Edition back in 87, 88, something like that, That was an amazing experience. Why? Because, yeah, the rules were cool, but also the art, and not just the art, the presentation, where the art pieces were, what they were being used to illuminate in the rules and the text, the font choices, the heading choices, the fact that the header fonts are all sort of these Gothic, Holy Roman Empire, early Renaissance era, like news sheet font, right? That is a huge deal. That had a massive effect on me because it transported me to that particular setting. The art is not D&D art. You're not seeing guys in plate mail fighting dragons. No, you're seeing rat catchers dressed like peasants in like a French Renaissance painting, being killed by giant rats or whatever, or rat men, I should say. Not that there's any such thing as Skaven, as everyone knows. The point is that all of these pieces all connect to create an experience. And that is what we're trying to give you. It's not just a set of rules. It's an experience. And I think you'll see that when you see the completed book. You'll see that what I'm trying to do is use this game to create an experience for you and your players. Will it work? I don't know. It's going to work for some people. It's not going to work for others. That's just the way it is. Anyway. Wow, there's a lot of you here. This is very good. I'm going to try and get to your comments and questions before we jump in here. Let me just see if there's anything. We have a bunch of channel members here as well, which is great. Good to see y'all, which is great. A lot of regulars. Vortec is here. Roll Rapid is here, which is great. Excellent. The Wizardborn is here. Okay, so let's see here. Vortec, where are we? There we go. Got my merch you sent. Awesome. I also rewatched season 1, so tonight we'll dive into Suede, which is Savage Worlds, and use the Fantasy Companion with Mythic to start a new solo campaign. Well, that sounds fun. That sounds very, very fun. As someone who reads RPG books, I'll never run just for fun. Presentation is important and definitely what sells a book to me. Yes, I agree. It's not just the rules or just the art. It is a combination of these things. We appreciate all the hard work and effort that you and your tiny yet awesome team are putting into the game. Whenever the PDF is ready, our patience will pay off. Well, thank you very much for that. And we are a tiny team. We are 3 core members with a couple of ancillary members doing very specific things. So we've been running ourselves ragged for the better part of 3 years now. And it's starting to show. All right. Let's see. I don't need this. What is this even doing here? I don't need this. Go away. I don't want you. I don't need you. Go away, you. Come on. Having issues with my droid. Okay. Do I even need this? Do I need to see this? I don't think I do. Okay. All right, so a lot of you have questions, general questions about the game, general questions about stuff. Again, I will try and get to it as much as I can. But first, let's talk about the thing that we're here to talk about, which is the state of the game. So, as I said, the game is in good shape. The rules have been done for some time, but it is the layout and the art and all this stuff that is taking the time. Now, in addition, please understand that it isn't just the PDF we're creating, right? Like the PDF is actually a document that's going to be sent to the printer, and then they have to produce that. But it's not just the book we're printing. We have to print the starter set, which means we have to lay out the starter set rules, and we have to lay out the starter set adventure, which is called the Smoldering Ember, which is turning out great and has got rave reviews from the playtesters so far, which is fantastic. We've got to design the box. We have to make sure that the dice are correct. By the way, we're getting prototypes back from our producers within, I think, next week, so that's very exciting. The tracker dial prototypes are coming to us. The miniature prototypes are coming. So things are happening, and we do try and keep you updated every month via those Kickstarter updates. So if you're not getting those, check your email, check your settings, because you really should be. If you are a backer, you should be getting those monthly updates. And even if you're not getting them, you can go to the Kickstarter page and you can see updates. We've done like 25 of them or something, like once a month, like clockwork. Try to be as transparent as possible. Okay. So, for those of you who may not know anything about the Broken Empires, it is what I call a sim light game, which means simulation light, not rules light. That is a very important distinction. Some people have heard sim light and think, oh, it's going to be rules light. You just roll a d6 and you win. No. It is not a rules light game. I have nothing against rules light games. It's just they're not my preference. I get bored of them very quickly. I'm very great friends with Kelsey Dion, the creator of Shadowdark. She was wonderful enough to send me a couple copies of Shadowdark, actually, a signed copy, very, very exciting. And I was like, okay, I'm going to run this because I needed a palate cleanser from heavier stuff, right? So I ran a little hex crawl with Shadowdark because, of course, I'm going to do my own thing. I didn't go to the dungeon. I went into the wilderness because that's what I do. And it was super fun. But after about 3 sessions, all of us were like, we need a little more meat on the bones. It's just our preference, right? So sim light means that we take a simulationist game, which is all about the detail of resolution, and we pull it back towards the center, back towards speed of resolution. Detail of outcome versus speed of resolution. That is the axis. I've said this many times. So over here, you've got the heavy sim games like Harnmaster or even Mithras. Over here, you've got the super rules light games like a Shadowdark, right? And in the middle, well, you don't really have anything in the middle. It's all a matter of opinion. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to have a game that is over here on the simulationist side of things where you get detail of outcome. But I'm trying to pull it back away from that into the middle so that it's a little faster. Speed is not my number one priority in the game. It never has been. Detail is my priority. However, the laws of physics dictate that when you move towards detail, you move away from speed. And when you move away from detail, you move towards speed. That's just the way it is. There's no way around that. So it's finding that happy medium, for me, in my estimation, in my opinion, that happy medium that allows a richly detailed game where the dice really do tell the story and yet is able to run with a fairly reasonable speed. So that is Sim Light. Now, it really does apply to the combat chapter, right? Combat, of course, let's all face it, when we pick up a game, what's the first thing we look at? I would say 99% of us, we figure out the combat. Maybe we look at the character sheet. That's another one, right? We look at the character sheet and then we say, okay, how does this thing play? We go to the combat chapter. Maybe we go to the core mechanics chapter. That's become a thing in recent years where they put the core mechanics right in the front of the book. That's what we do in the Broken Empires. But it's the combat. You want to know, how can I kill someone? Because we're all psychopaths, apparently. But this is the question. So we turn to the combat chapter, and we want to know what that means. Well, the combat in the Broken Empires is richly detailed, but not so detailed that it's going to slow things down to a simulationist crawl, right? Once you learn it. Now, what I'm going to show you here what you're about to see may shock you. What I'm about to show you here may make your eyes cross and go, oh my God. But as I say in the Game Masters chapter, trust me, this is like a lot of heavier games where all you have to do is commit to figuring it out, give yourself a couple sessions. By session 2 or 3, it's running like a dream. Or you hate it and you go play, Into the Odd or something. But presumably, you're interested in this style of game. So presumably, you're interested in learning how it works. And you can't just play it out of the box. It's not one of those games, right? You do have to learn it. Now, you don't need a PhD. It's not like you have to have an advanced degree in gaming in order to run this game or to learn this game. But there are certain key things you need to understand. And once you internalize those things, everything moves very fast. That's how it worked with Harnmaster for me back in the day when I looked at it. Because Harnmaster is a very intimidating game when you look at it from the outside without understanding its processes, right? But once you figure it out, which does not take long, then you see the beauty of what the game can give you. And that is what I'm trying to do with the Broken Empires. Okay, so let us... Oh, this is good. Thank you. I appreciate this, Stat Scott. TBE is the absolute most transparent and communicative Kickstarter I've backed. Much appreciated. Well, I very much appreciate you saying that because we go to great lengths to try and keep you guys updated on what's going on. We really do. We put out an update every single month. We try and show you pieces of the game that we can, whether that's art or bits of rules. I put out a whole chapter. I pulled out the goals chapter. The entire chapter was sent out as a Christmas present to the backers. So I very much appreciate you saying that. So not a scam then? Oh, I wish this was a scam. My life would be so much easier if this was a scam, because I've had your money for over a year. I should be sitting on a beach right now. Or driving around in my Ferrari if this was a scam. But if it is a scam, I'm the worst scam artist there is, because here I am. I've had your money for over a year, and yet every month I continuously show you the progress on the game, including doing all of these videos constantly. So no, Grognard, it's not a scam. I absolutely promise you. Okay, you ready to get into this? Let's have a look at the combat chapter. So, as I said, some of the art is placeholder. This is not placeholder. This is, in fact, our key piece for the combat chapter. I love this piece. There's a little hint of Warhammer to it, which I quite like. The setting of the Broken Empires encompasses many different cultures, and speaks to many different historical eras from Earth that have been sort of transported metaphorically over to the world. So the fact that you do see a tiny piece of kind of that late medieval, early Renaissance feel to this, I love that, because there are places in the world where that exists, right? Anyway, so I'm not going to do like a crazy line-by-line thing about the rules here, but I do want to give you an overview, and mostly it's to show you the general look and the general feel, okay? So, what we do in the chapter is, well, we've got a little symbol here. We have a specially made symbol for each chapter as we go forward. And there's the introduction here. We do keywords in the chapter. These are things that we just kind of feel it's a little gift to the GM when he's using the book as a reference book, because let's face it, most RPG books are reference books. Where if you're looking for a particular keyword, yes, you can go to the index. We will have an index. But also I just like the idea that you can flip to the very beginning of the chapter and you can scan this list of keywords to see if what you're looking for is going to be in this chapter. So we're trying to make that work. So far, it's pretty useful. So we said, okay. Then we have, I'm going to scroll up a bit so you can see here. This is an overview of the combat round sequence. Now, again, to those of you coming from 5e or to those of you coming from a rules light thing, you're going to look at this and go, oh my God, it takes forever. But it doesn't. It doesn't. Again, once you internalize it, it goes fast. So combatants roll initiative. We talk about that in a second. I will say this. Players roll initiative. Enemies typically do not. They have a set initiative, so the GM doesn't have to do that. He just tracks where the players are. Initiative is based on your innate sort of abilities and skills and, how you created your character, but it's also heavily influenced by the armor you're wearing. Basically, the heavier the armor doesn't slow you down. It doesn't make you can't move less than somebody else, but it reduces your initiative. It reduces your reaction speed, so to speak. Why is that? It's because it's a game balance thing, and it's one of those tropes. It's one of those tropes that the HEMA people hate, because anyone who's actually fought in real armor knows that heavy armor doesn't actually slow you down. That's a myth, but it's a trope, and it's a game balancing mechanism, and it works quite well in our case. In any event, each combatant takes a turn in initiative order. This is pretty simple, right? This is you can move and do a thing in your turn, like many bazillions of other games, okay? An attacker makes an opposed roll versus the defender. This is a key thing in the system. It's a skill-based system, D100. We roll. If you get your skill or less, you succeed, and then the defender does the same thing, and we have things called success levels. We'll get into all this. But basically, if the attacker wins, if the attacker beats the defender, then the first thing he can do is to pick a qualifying combat maneuver. What is a combat maneuver? A combat maneuver is like, dare I say, a special effect, like in Mithras, which is a special thing you can do in order to take advantage of your enemy's momentary lapse or momentary failure. So in a lot of games, and this is this right here, the combat maneuver thing is a big conceptual difference from many, many games, not all of them. Mithras kind of was one of the pioneers of this idea. In many, many games, what happens is, let's say the character says, okay, I want to see if I can disarm that guy. What happens? The GM looks at the rules. Oh, rules for disarm. Okay, make an attack roll at -4. And if you succeed, then either you disarm him, or in some versions of the game, he can do like a saving throw against it. So there's all these impediments to you getting what you want. And what happens? The player says, All right, forget it. I'm just going to hit him in the vast majority of cases, right? So what the combat maneuver does, it says you're rolling to strike or to get an edge over your opponent with your weapon. Once you do, in that explicit moment, you seize an opportunity. What is that opportunity? It could be to circumvent his shield. It could be to trip him. It could be to disarm him. It could be to drive him back into the next zone. It could be to unbalance him so that he's on the back foot and now he's in a penalty. There's all these things that could happen, and there's not all these things, as you will see. It's a limited list because you can go overboard with this stuff. It's a limited list. It fits on one page, as you'll see, one spread. But what that means is you don't decide the special thing you want to do until after the roll. So that is a big conceptual difference that once you understand that, it works really well. So then you determine the DOS. The DOS is the degree of success. So that's real simple. If I roll with 5 success levels and you defend with 2 success levels, I win with 3 success levels. DOS just means that the losers' SLs, success levels, subtract from the winners, and whatever's left over is the DOS. This is a fairly common idea. Calculate total damage. You add your degree of success to the weapon's base damage. Okay, every weapon has a base damage. You don't roll for damage. One of the things about the Broken Empire's combat system is that everything happens in one roll, or a minimum number of rolls, as you're about to see. So I've rolled to attack. That attack tells me, did I hit? Did I beat the defender? What kind of combat maneuvers do I qualify for, which I then execute? What is my degree of success? What is my damage I'm causing? And then it also determines what the hit location is. Where did I hit? And that is the attacker's ones die. So if I rolled a 43, I have 4 SLs, and the ones die is 3, which means I look at our handy-dandy chart here, which is also on your character sheet, and 3 means the body, okay? Right there. So the roll tells me where I hit him. And then if you really want to, this is optional, but I love this, then you can determine the detailed hit location. You use the defender's ones die to determine the precise point of impact. So if I hit him in the body and I rolled a 43, so 3 is the body, and let's say he rolled 79, okay? Well, 9 is his ones die, which means I hit him in the groin. Ooh, so cool. Again, this is totally optional. You do not need precise detailed hit locations, but I love it because it paints the picture of what just happened. I didn't just stab him in the body. I stabbed him in the nuts. I stabbed him in the groin. Then you apply protection. So this is another common thing. We have armor points. If you have a armor in that location, it's going to reduce the incoming damage by the amount of armor points. If you also have a shield, the shield is a universal armor point protector. Your shields are great, right? Because shields give you armor points everywhere. Now, you can circumvent them with a combat maneuver. So you apply protection, you remove the armor points, and then whatever is left over becomes a wound of that particular value. There are no real hit points in the game. Well, there is something called death threshold, but it's not quite the same thing. You don't just do hit points. Oh, 3, I do 3 hit points, you subtract your hit points. No. Every wound is specific. And every wound might have an immediate effect depending on the hit location that it strikes. But we'll get into that if and when we get to the wound section, okay? And then because it is a wound, the victim of it rolls a wound die, which is our red wound die, special die. You don't need it, it's just a D10, but we provide special dice in the starter set, or you can buy them separately. The target rolls a wound die plus their toughness, and they compare that to the total amount of wounds in that location. And if they get that number or less, the location becomes impaired, and that has various results, okay? So, again, you look at this, you think, oh my God, there's so much going on here. Oh my God. There's really not, okay? But there are key steps. And I will tell you this, when I've run this game, when I've played in this game, my friend Jared, he's a very experienced GM. He was running this game for us because I needed him to test it. And at one point in the middle of the fight, he stopped and he went, oh my God, I think it's my favorite combat system ever. Which is great. I mean, that's a pretty great compliment. Okay, so then we get into the details of the combat round here. Violent conflict is structured in rounds, which typically are about 6 seconds, right? It doesn't really matter, but for timing purposes, it's easy to call it that. Everyone gets a turn. You can take an action. You can take a move. Initiative, you roll the D10 plus your initiative value. As I explained, that's part of the initiative value you create your character with, and you can improve it with various talents. But basically, it's also penalized by the armor, and there's a very easy formula. You do that when you wear your armor. It's simple. And then you've got one number you look at, you roll a d10, and whatever number that is. If you are equal to or higher than the enemy, then you go before them. If you're lower than the enemy, then you go after them. Basically is how it works. Certain enemies, the GM has the option to roll initiative for them if he really wants to. That is in the bestiary. There's an option for that. But it's just easier to say, yeah, this guy's on 12 or whatever. So that's that. We do roll initiative every round. That is important. It is important tactically. As you will see, when you are able to seize the initiative in a given round could radically shape the outcome of that fight, okay? And then we go into surprise here. So before we get into surprise, let me just check back with the chat to see where we're at here, to see if I can answer any of your questions. Let's see. 500-page book with 21 chapters. Yeah, well, it's a big one. Steven is online. After reading Mithras, I'm so excited for the Broken Empires. I want that detail, control, and lethality with the streamlined design of TBE. Yeah, I love Mithras, by the way. But for me, Mithras is just that much too detailed. That's a matter of opinion, right? But for me, the Broken Empires takes the ideas of Mithras and like the kind of the philosophy, but the feel of a Mithras combat, and it does just dial back a bit, so it speeds it up a bit more. But also it adds this idea of wounds, which separate wounds and recovery, the way it works is really inspired by Harnmaster. In Mithras, you still have hit points, right? Hit points per location. So the Broken Empires gets away from that. I really like this. It means that how well you attack determines which maneuver you can use. Yes, exactly. And it also determines how much damage you do. That is so important to me. I've always hated in the old days, you're playing D&D, and you roll. I rolled 19 against his armor class of 12. That's awesome. Okay, roll your damage. I rolled a 1. So I hit with this really supreme hit against his armor class, but then I rolled a 1. Now, I understand why those mechanics exist, but to me, it was always like, no. The quality of the hit should not only determine the quality of the wound, but it should be reduced by the quality of the defense, and that is what the Broken Empires does. Format looks great. Thank you. We work very hard on it, very hard. Are there going to be flow charts? Well, there is a GM screen, which puts a lot of this very important stuff right at your fingertips and right at your eye level, too. It's interesting, when we're designing the GM screen, we're very cognizant of like, okay, if I'm sitting at the table and I've got the GM screen in front of me, the things I need to reference more often have to be up at my eye level. They can't be down at the bottom, because even this eye movement, that's too much effort in the heat of a combat. I want to be able to immediately access what I need to access without having to be hunting and searching for the stuff I'm looking for, right? So, yes, this information will be on the GM screen. The shield is on my left arm. How do I reach across my body? You don't have to. The shield automatically gives you protection everywhere. Or turn in place and defend from an attack from behind. There are no facing rules in this. It's another thing. If you look at a game like GURPS is hyper-simulationist with that. Facing really matters. Or the Fantasy Trip, which was its predecessor. For me, that level of detail is just that much too much. So I pulled it back, and now, because also we use zones, as you're about to see, facing is not really an issue. Now, if you are taken by surprise, you do not get to use your shield, and in fact, that's what we're talking about here. So if you do take someone by surprise, basically it's an opposed roll between your stealth and their perception. That's really good. Attacking someone with surprise is great. You really want to do that whenever you can, because you make the attack roll with plus 20, so if your skill's 50, now you're rolling on 70. All combat maneuvers cost 1 SL less than normal. That is actually a big deal. And the surprised opponent gets neither a defense roll nor any shield AP. So if the guy does have a big shield, if you attack him by surprise, you're basically taking him from behind. And he doesn't get his shield, right? So that's a big deal. That is that. Okay, so let's talk about taking a turn movement. So taking a turn, there's movement and there is action. Okay? Where are we? Where are we here? So everything is zones. Now, zones has been, in the old days, zones was very controversial. I don't find zones controversial. I think they're very useful. Because to me, in a fight, what is of paramount importance is two things. One, can I hit the guy? Am I close enough to hit the guy? And two, is there anything in the immediate area that I can use against him? That, for me, is the core aspect of a combat. Zones achieve that perfectly fine. A zone is an abstraction of distance. It basically means, like I said, are you close enough to hit the guy? So the abstractions are engaged. If you're engaged, you're already in melee, okay? That has very specific consequences. Close is in your same zone, but you're not in melee. Short, you're one zone away. And I've put like these from 30 to 60 feet. 60. These are complete abstractions. The zones are very malleable depending on what you need them to be. But what does matter is, am I close enough to hit him? Now, if I'm using a sword, then if I'm close enough to hit him, I'm going to be engaged. But if I'm using a bow, well, that bow is going to have a certain range, right? And like a long bow, I think, has a long range. So you can fire at someone 3 zones away, right? I think a short bow has maybe short or medium, but whatever it is. So what do the zones mean? It depends on the context of the scenario, right? But typically speaking, they're 30-foot diameter areas, typically speaking. Now, the other aspect of it is what is in the zone? What's the description of the zone? What is the zone? Does the zone have hazards to it that I, as a player, can take advantage of, or I, as the GM, can take advantage of? So there's many ways to do this, but this is sort of the main thing. There's a number. There's like 6 main zone or 5, I guess, main zone hazards. Confined just means it's like it's a cramped tunnel or something that has excuse me. That has a specific penalty to dodge and using heavier weapons that you have to swing typically, or just that are bulky and get in the way. A rough zone means it's difficult footing, and that has a number of specific things. If you drive someone back into a rough zone, they immediately have to do an athletics roll, or else they fall prone. And being prone is not something you ever want to be in a fight. It's very, very bad, unless you're trying to dodge arrow fire. And it has ramifications for charging and things like this. But like a mountainous zone filled with jagged or loose rocks is a rough zone, or a beach zone at high tide. Obscured means anything that's interfering with the vision due to fog, smoke, ash, foliage, darkness, or similar effects. Basically, if I'm trying to shoot someone who's obscured, it's -20 to hit them. Now, I had many more complex rules of determining this, as well as cover. Oh man, I had all these very complex rules for cover. And in the end, I went, all I care about is, does the cover make it harder to hit the dude or not? And so, does it? Great, -20. That's it. Works. As I said, sim light, right? You could go crazy with that level of simulation if you wanted to, but I didn't. For me, the meat of the simulation in combat is more about the exchange of the combat and the consequences, the immediacy of the consequences of a hit or a wound. Blocked is the zone that's difficult to enter or leave. That could mean many things. I leave it up to the GM to use these as creatively as they basically want to. A damaging zone is something that literally causes you damage, and there's ways to handle that. Sort of a key concept in the game is here, if the damage is external or internal. All that means is if the damage source is external, it means you're going to get armor. And if it's internal, you're not. That's all that means. But there's a number of things we need to use those terms for in order to differentiate. Like, for example, in Magic, there's specific ways to cause damage, and you need to determine whether it's external or internal, because obviously, if I'm blasting somebody with a spell, I need to know whether that guy gets his armor or not, right? So there's rules to figure that out. And then other is like a catch-all that basically says, well, if you can't figure it out, it's this other thing here. This is just a lethality guidance, rough guidance for the kind of damage that a that a damaging zone does. Okay, and then taking a turn, actions. So you have a move and you have an action. You can do them in any order you want, typically speaking. But here's a list of by far the most common actions you're going to do. And in fact, anything that isn't explicitly on this list is probably going to be part of this here, perform minor actions. But before we get to that, let's go back to the chat and see if I've missed anything, because I'm sure I have. All right, where are we here? Where are we here? I really like the combat is a contested roll and not just hitting a static number. It feels more realistic that the defender is actively opposing and that they can fumble at that too. This is true. And we will get to critical hits and critical fumbles, or failures rather, as we go through. Does it allow for a left-handed character? Yes, it does. You absolutely can do that. Although in most cases, it doesn't matter. The only time it matters is if you are using a weapon in the offhand, you have a penalty. I think it's minus 20. It's in the chapter somewhere. But otherwise, it doesn't really matter. And again, that's one of those simulation things. I was a fencer for years, so I know what it means, because I'm right-handed when it comes to fighting with a sword. I know what it means to fight someone who's left-handed. It's a nightmare. It completely throws you off. So if I was Joe Simulationist, I would want to build that in. Oh, well, there should be some way to account for someone having a left hand. But that is not sim light, my friend. That is pure sim, and that is in the realm of some other game. If the defender has no role, how to determine a detailed location, that's in here as well. You roll a d10 if you want it, right? So if you surprise someone, right? So if you surprise someone and you hit him in the leg and you want to know exactly where you hit him, well, he didn't roll to defense. You can just roll a d10 and figure that out. It's easy. What's going to be the page size? This is a standard book like any other rule book. So I've got a Dragonbane book here. It's going to be like this dimension, but it's going to be, it's going to be much thicker because this book, this bestiary, is about 150 pages. So it's going to be a little more than this, a little thicker than this. You could probably stop a few bullets with mine. I love a good tome. You know why? I love everything in one book. This is preference. There's a lot of people who say, no, I want different books. I want a player's book and a DM's book and a monster manual. And that's perfectly fine. For me, I like everything in one book. Easier. I know everything is. I don't have to have a stack on the table. I know everything's in this one book. Okay. Where are we? Is the Broken Empire meant to be more or less detailed in speediness of play compared to Hardmaster? So yeah, that's a good example, and I kind of talked about this at the beginning. It is slightly less detailed, but slightly faster. Basically. All right. Oh, Grognard. Oh, you're just trying to piss me off now. Can I use 2 shields? No! Only an idiot would use 2 shields. You know what I'm talking about. All right. Have you ever experimented with card-based initiative systems? Yeah, I love Savage Worlds. Also, Dragonbane has card-based initiative. They're great. They're fun. But they wouldn't work because initiative is very much in the Broken Empires. Initiative is very much affected by armor, and you need armor penalties. And to have armor penalties, you need numbers. Otherwise, you have to create a whole new system, and that is outside the purview of what I am going to do. Well, like DCC, they have 900-page rule books, mainly because spells are pages long per spell. That is true. We do not have that issue in this game. That is true. All right. Is there something like a grievous wound table? Sort of, as you will see when we get to the wounds chapter. But let us move on to the action. So these are going to be very familiar to most of you. You can aim with a ranged weapon. You can attack in melee. I've already sort of described how that works. You can attack at range. Here is all the things you need to know about attacking at range. Now here on the side, you will see I have rather extensive examples because I love examples. For me, when I read a book, most of the time I actually wind up understanding the rule better from reading the example than I do from the rule itself, which is why it is of paramount importance for me to ensure that the examples correctly reflect the rules that they are referencing. 2 things about that. 1, every Warhammer book I ever read that past first edition was a nightmare with this. You would read the rule and the example right beside it would be completely wrong. It would be referencing completely different numbers and it would drive me crazy. And now I know how easy it is for that to happen. So I was very critical of those guys for a long time. Mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. I fully understand how easy it is to let that slip by. Nonetheless, we have many eyes on this to try and make sure that that stuff is not going to happen, not going to slip through. But you know what? Something is always going to slip through, right? You could have 500 people proofreading the book and something is going to slip through. It's just the way it is. If I waited to correct every possible error, we'd never release the book, and that is not acceptable. So I like extended examples, and as you can see, we have a bunch of them here. So cast a spell or ask for a miracle. This is an action, obviously. I'm not going to get too much into this because this really heavily refers to the magic chapter, which we're not going to talk about today. Charge. Charge is great. Charge means you get a bonus to hit people, and incidentally, a bonus to your skill also implies, if you succeed, a potential bonus to your damage, right? Because if you think about it, if your skill's 50, then this isn't exactly true, but the most you could get is 5 SLs. It's actually 8, because if you roll your exact skill, you get a critical, and a critical adds 3 SLs to it. But for the purposes of the simplicity of this example, you can, the maximum you can get is 5 SLs. But if you add plus 20 to that, well, theoretically, you're also adding plus 2 SLs to that if you roll, because you have that headroom to do that there, right? So that translates into combat maneuvers, that translates into damage, it translates into more difficult to defend against, all that stuff. Delay is just, I'm going to wait until later. Draw a weapon and attack. This is very simulationist of me. To draw a weapon is an action in the game. A lot of people hate that, but it's a very simulationist thing that I've always liked, and I can't even explain why I do, I just do. So it's there. If you want to draw a weapon and attack, you do so to minus 20, otherwise drawing a weapon is an action. I can hear the outrage now. Except from the deep sim guys. The deep sim guys are like, well, of course it is. Of course you do. Yeah, of course drawing your weapon is an action. Don't be silly. Environmental maneuver. I really like the environmental maneuver. This is basically license for the player to get super creative with the zone to do a non-damaging effect. So basically, if the character wants to throw sand in his face, right? That's a classic thing, right? You can do that by using a particular skill against the target's defense, which is also going to be contextually appropriate. And if you succeed, the degree of success you get will determine the kind of combat maneuver you could perform. So you can unbalance them, you could drive them back, you can disarm them, you can trip them, that kind of stuff. So again, it's not the principal thing you would do in a fight if you're trying to kill somebody, but it's there. It's an interesting thing to sort of lend a new dimension to combat. Fighting withdrawal. Okay, this one I really like too. This rule was inspired, but oh, look at this. I want to give a big shout out to Knights of Last Call. Hey, brother, how you doing? Good to see you. Thanks for coming on board. This is Derek over at Knights of Last Call. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. You really got to come on the show. We got to do like a interview thing, or just a co-stream or something. You're great. I met Derek at Gen Con last year. Well, I think I met you actually the year before, maybe, but we had that great conversation. We had like a 3-hour conversation about every game on Earth. It was awesome. Anyway, okay, so fighting withdrawal. Here's the thing that has become the norm in most of these games. You're in combat with somebody, and you want to leave. What happens? Well, the enemy gets an attack of opportunity. Very, very common. I don't like that. I don't like it. Why? Because it prevents player groups from being able to tactically withdraw and reform the line, so to speak, which is a very useful thing to do in many situations. BECMI D&D. So Rules Compendium era D&D, or I shouldn't say Rules Compendium era. I should say BECMI era, but Rules Compendium was the BECMI essentially rules. And BECMI had a rule which inspired this, okay? Basically, if you are in melee with somebody and you want to disengage with them, you can do that as your action. But here's the thing. You can't engage anybody else as you go. You always have to withdraw backwards. You can't disengage past somebody. So I said before that facing isn't a thing. Well, facing is kind of a thing in this, right? And again, this is honor system, but the idea is that you can't use this to go past your enemy. I just hit my my glass. In fact, I want to make sure I didn't make a little. Yeah. There we go. Make sure that there's no smudges there. All right. You can't withdraw past an enemy. You got to go backwards, basically. But here is the thing. After performing a fighting withdrawal, you may make a single attack against the first opponent who engages you before your next turn and before they make their attack. This is the opposite of attack of opportunity. This rewards players for tactically reforming, because you can use your action to fighting withdraw, knowing that if he comes at you, you get a chance to hit him first. That completely changes the dynamics of the tactics. So I love that, and like I said, I first found that that rules inspiration in the rules compendium, and I kind of blew my mind. I was like, how did I miss this? They handle it slightly differently, but the same basic idea. So I love that rule. Super cool. Flee is the opposite. We're no longer tactically doing anything. We just want to get the hell out of here. And there's specific rules about that. And that is, you might get hit in that case. Oh, thanks, man. Look at you giving me a little tip. Absolutely. Maybe it's because I just got back from GaryCon, but I'd be more open-minded to Sim right now. Oh, really? Also love the withdrawal rules. Cool. Oh, not from mine. From Warhammer the Old World. I got to tell you, man, I'm really liking what I see with Warhammer the Old World. At least on paper, I really, really dig it. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about my game. Thanks for the $5, buddy. And yeah, we should do that. Let's have your people get a hold of my people, and we'll set something up. Okay. Hold to interrupt. This is a little like delay, except it's very conditional. It's, I'm going to wait for that guy to poke his head out of that arch, and if he does, I shoot him, right? This is a little like in the old Rollmaster game, we used to call it holding for opportunity or taking an opportunity action. It just basically meant you were waiting until the thing. But in this case, you have to wait for a very specific thing. And if that thing doesn't happen, you lose your turn. Inspire Ally, I like this too. I like giving, and this is inspired by Savage Worlds, I like giving players, the non-combatant characters, the option to be able to participate in deadly fights without having to, put their neck on the line necessarily. So Inspire Ally, you can bolster an ally with words of presence by rolling Inspire, and on a success, one ally within hearing distance who can understand you gains +10 to their next roll. And for every 3 success levels, you may either grant an additional +10 to that ally or apply a +10 to another eligible ally within range. What was it called in Savage Worlds? It wasn't called Inspire Ally. It was called something else. But I loved it. And I'm like, oh, we have to have that. Because now the Scholar character, the Lore Master, can actually do something concrete in combat, right? Besides going up and rolling his 20% chance to hit. Perform a minor action. This is a big hodgepodge. It's like anything that isn't the rest is perform a minor action, basically. Rise from prone. Okay, so this is another thing that kind of differentiates some of the tactics. So as I said before, being prone is very, very bad. Very bad. Why? Because a number of reasons. One, the enemy gets +20 on you, which is a big deal, right? +20 in this game is a big deal. But also, if you are prone and engaged with an enemy, you can't just get up. You're engaged with an enemy. So if you're engaged, you must make a standard athletics roll with a -10 penalty for each additional engaged foe. So if you're outnumbered, you're in big trouble. On a success, you're no longer prone, right? But it's your action. You got to get up carefully and not be stabbed as you do. On a success with 5 or more success levels, so an incredible, typically a critical, but not necessarily, you rise without spending your action, so you can get up and still do something. And on a failure, you remain prone. Bad news. Imagine that you're outnumbered 2-1. Those guys are going to have an outnumbering penalty of +20. If he knocks you prone, now they have a bonus of +40 to hit you. That's murderous, right? Murderous. It doesn't necessarily guarantee they're going to. And it certainly doesn't guarantee the quality of their hit. They have to have expertise for that, which is a thing we talk about in the character creation chapter. But it means that you're in big trouble, right? And if you're not engaged, prone is still an issue. You still have to get up, but it's much easier to do so. And wearing heavy body armor, like, and I specifically mean armor in the body, mail, bone, scale, or plate imposes penalties to this action. So armor is great because it saves your life, but it slows you down in terms of initiative, and it makes it hard to sneak and to get up, right? So run is your bog standard. I'm going to run more. Set for charge. This is if you know a guy's going to charge you. You can wait for him and brace for impact, and basically you get a chance to hit him first, is essentially what that comes down to. Stand your ground. This is like the full defense move. This is, I'm not going anywhere. So you can't attack anything, but all your defensive rolls until the start of your next turn gain +20. Enemies do not gain outnumbering bonuses against you, And any trip or drive back maneuver used against you costs +2 SLs, which is great if you're trying to, what I call, claim the zone. If you're trying to create, you're trying to stand in the bottleneck, stand in the doorway and prevent the guy from getting through, this is the action you can take. But, of course, it's dangerous because you can't attack back, so you can't stop them. Taunt foe is the opposite of inspire ally. You can rattle an enemy with words of presence. You use intimidate or wit, and basically you do the same thing. Why is this here? I don't know why that's there. Okay, so before we get to critical attacks in combat, let's go back to the chat to see where we're at with the chat. That withdrawing rule is great. No longer glued to your opponent in melee, but not simply just ignoring the opponent either. Yes, exactly. It's an interesting little tactical choice that you have to make. And Derek says, don't worry, you've already got my Kickstarter money. It's good. Could you use Inspire Ally as narratively, having a character shouting warnings or tips to someone else? Sure. Yeah, why not? I mean, it has a concrete effect, but you could use it narratively however you want, I suppose. How does movement on combat work if you use zones that can't withdraw past enemies? Can I just move past? No, you can't, because, well, you can move past enemies let me try that again. You can move past enemies if they're in your zone, but not if you're engaged with them. That's the difference. So if there is an enemy in the zone and you want to get past them and you're not engaged with them, you can do that. But then, I didn't actually go over this with charge, but in order to charge someone, you have to first move into their zone, and then the charge action moves you from close to engaged. Which means, if you do that, let's say you're in the zone with an enemy, and you move past them into a zone. So now you're technically at short distance, right? So you're one zone away. And you stop there to do a thing. That enemy can now charge you, because he moves into your zone, up to close range, and then engages with an attack, and he charges you with +20. So you can, but you have to be very cognizant of where your enemies are at any one time, right? You have to be situational awareness. If I do this, what does that set me up for, right? My ear trumpet sent me, myself, and Guy gift memberships. Oh, well, look at that. That's very cool. And the Pitbull received a gift membership. Well, look at this. It's Christmas time. We're all just sharing and giving, and it's wonderful. I don't think that wolf knows how to use it. I think you're right. I don't think that wolf is using his shield properly. You're absolutely right. Oh, Fuzzy Gamer says, we'd love to see the Broken Empires RPG at the Origins Game Fair in 2027. Do you have any plans to attend or run demos? Not so far, but it's in 2027. I'm going to be trying to do as many rounds as I can to the various conventions. We are doing PACE, the Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo, in January of next year. That's going to be my very first con as a Broken Empires vendor. And I'm going to be a special guest there too, which is super cool. But yeah, I'd love to do all of them. So we're trying to work that out right now, because of course you have to do it much in advance. Fuzzy Gamer, if you are a representative of Origins, let me know, and send me an email or something, because I'd love to have an inside edge, a contact, or at least know who to talk to about that. Okay. There's a bunch of stuff here. All right. I'm going to try and stick to the questions specifically about combat that I can see here. That's more of a travel question. Shatterforce, can you socially intimidate while in combat for a strategic benefit or to get the enemy to lose morale and break and run? So the short answer is yes, there's actually a talent you can have, but there's also a combat maneuver called Compel Surrender, which we will get to. And Compel Surrender is an excellent way to end a combat early by basically forcing your enemy to realize that they're in big trouble and they should stop. Origins would be a great spot for TBE. Yes, I agree. Grognar wants to know, do I get any advantage using a polearm? Yes, you do. So one of the things that weapons have is a feature called Reach. And Reach, and this is a perfect example of the differences in how I handle it versus how something like Mithras handles it. In Mithras, each weapon has a Reach, and in order to they handle it very simulationistly, which is super cool. But for me, again, it's just too much detail. It slows down that much, right? Too much. In Mithras, if I have a dagger and you've got a spear, you got the reach on me. In order for me to even get to you, I have to close the distance first. I have to get within your reach to be able to do it. Now, that allows me to attack you. It also means that you can't really attack me very well now. That's all beautifully simulationist, but for me, it's a little bit too much, which means in my game, reach is a very simple calculation. Most weapons, like hand weapons, have reach of 0. But if I have a reach of 1 and you have a reach of 0, then that difference of 1 equals a plus 10 to all of my things against you, whether that's attacking or defending. So if I'm using a long spear with a reach of 2, then if I'm attacking you and you are using a reach of 0, a weapon with a reach of 0, I'm attacking you with plus 20 and to defend as well. It abstracts the idea of keeping you at distance, right? So yes, those rules do exist in there. How deadly is it to fight more than one opponent? Do I get my defense roll against all? You do. So this is an interesting question. There was a version of the game in the early days where, there was many versions of this in the early days, where what I didn't want was an action point system. Again, like Mithras has. I didn't want to have to count action points. I just wanted everybody to be able to move and do a thing. But because opposed rolls are a big deal, I also wanted to make sure that they were able to defend. And originally I had this thing where, yes, you can defend, but then every other attack that comes in is minus 20, cumulative. Well, that's great on paper, but it sucks at the table. It's really hard to keep track of. It's fine if you're the player keeping track of your own character. But if you're the GM and you're keeping track of 7 orcs, good luck with that. So I went, okay, that's too much. So instead, if you're outnumbered, each outnumbering opponent gets a plus 20 against you. That's it. Now, that doesn't sound like much. It's a lot. You can still defend against all of those, but now you have to defend against all of them, and they all get plus 20 on you. Brutal. Now, the exception to that is if you're defending against a ranged attack, because ranged attacks do not get an outnumbering bonus for obvious reasons. So that old rule about the cumulative... Actually, it's not... Is it cumulative? Actually, let's see. What did I have here? Did I have it here? Where is the defense against... Defense against arrows. What did I say? It's in somewhere. Where the hell did I put it? No, it's got to be up here. It's got to be in ranged attack somewhere. Defending. Oh, there we go. If defending against 2 or more ranged attacks from any source in the same round, any defense after the first suffers a minus 20. So it's not cumulative, but it just means it is harder to defend against like 3 arrows coming in, right? But I did that because the other ways were not fun and they were too punishing. They were too much to track and they were too punishing. This way, you still have a chance, right? Not necessarily a good chance, but you still have a chance. Okay. What do you want players to feel during combat? Gritty survival, cinematic action, or something else? Certainly closer to gritty survival than cinematic action. This is a down in the mud, blood and infection and pus and sputum game. Not a, I am a 5th level fighter and I ride in on my winds of awesome and I slash the head off 3 orcs with 1 hit. No, absolutely not. You got 5e for that. You got many games. You got Draw Steel for that, by all accounts. I haven't actually played it. Okay. The layout is quite nice. Thank you very much. Okay. Can you dodge a parry and attack? How about riposte? So you can dodge and parry and attack. In fact, you can. If you have a shield, you can parry a missile attack by using your melee skill. There's no separate shield skill. If you don't have a shield, you must dodge that attack. Otherwise, you're just going to be hit, if they hit. You can parry. Is there a riposte? Not exactly, although when we come to criticals, there used to be. I used to have a riposte system in place, and it got too much. It just, again, it was too much to track. So if you're familiar with Hornmaster has something called a tactical advantage. What that means is, if you attack me and I defend better than you, I might get a tactical advantage, which means I immediately get to do something against you. And again, that's cool on paper, but if you are trying to deal with 7 orcs versus 5 player characters, let's say, it is very easy to lose track in the round. Wait a minute, was that his attack or his tactical? Wait a minute, where are we? It's very easy for that to happen. So ripostes, there is a talent that allows you to do it, I think. I think it's still in the game. Maybe not. That's okay, because then it's an exceptional thing, but I didn't want it to be something everybody could do because it becomes a nightmare for tracking, right? Okay, so let us go back to criticals. Critical attacks and defenses in combat. As a reminder, critical success is rolling doubles under the skill value or rolling the exact skill value itself. A critical failure is rolling doubles over the skill value, and any roll of 99 or a 100 is a failure regardless of skill. Thank you, Fuzzy Gamer, by the way, for the $10. Old printer here, love the layout. Awesome. Well, my guys have worked very hard on the layout, so I'm very pleased, and thank you for the $10 donation. Okay, so a lot of people ask me about this. Any roll of 99, because in most D100 games it's 96 to 100. The question is, well, why isn't it 96? And the answer is, if you're super skilled, I buy there's a 2% chance of failure, not a 5%. Pure preference. That's all. Pure preference. So critical success when attacking. Anytime you critical, you get +3 SLs always. But also, in combat, you perform up to 2 qualifying maneuvers. That could be devastating. Choose location and trip, for example, because like, as we'll see with the trip combat maneuver, you have to hit them in the leg in order for it to trigger. So with a critical, you hit them on the body and you really want to trip them, you could say choose location, trip, if you could afford both of them based on the weapon. And a lot of these maneuvers you'll see are based on the weapon you're using, but we will come to that. And a critical success beats ties. If you defend, when you critically defend, you add +3 SLs to your result. So it's, again, far less likely you're going to lose that exchange. Critical failure when attacking, however. Anyone engaged with the attacker may immediately leave melee, moving to close range, even if they have already moved or acted this round. You're taking advantage of your attacker's overreach, your opponent's stumble, and you go, okay, I'm out. You can. Or one engaged defender may immediately perform the drive back maneuver on the attacker and follow them into the new zone. They fumble, and you take advantage to push them into another area. And a critically failed ranged attack strikes an unintended target that could reasonably be hit. Otherwise, it reduces the attacker's ammo die by 1 step. Yes, there are ammo dice. I like them. I like them fine. Critical failure when defending just adds +1 SL to the opponent's result. So you fail so bad, it makes your opponent's hit better slightly. Okay. Okay. Before we get to combat maneuvers, because this is really cool. I want to answer this question by Laugh with Mig. I think you mentioned it already in the past, but are players encouraged to fight, or is it too much of a risk in general? In which situations would you fight versus which ones you would avoid? Okay, this is a great question. I believe in the philosophy called combat as war, not combat as sport. What does that mean? It means that I believe if someone comes at you with a deadly weapon with lethal intent, there's a chance you're going to die. This makes it scary. Now, the game mechanics are actually slightly more forgiving than a Mithras or a Harnmaster, which is interesting because it has all the hallmarks of being a quote-unquote deadly system, but it's really not. As you will see if we do get to the core wounds chapter, and I'm not sure if we'll get to it today. We've been at this already a while. But as you will see in wounds, the most common result of a clash of arms isn't that someone drops dead. It's that they drop in shock. Now, shock is bad. Shock puts you out of the fight. You're lying on the ground, clutching your innards, begging for your mommy, right? It's bad news. But shock isn't death. Now, if you have taken sufficient damage that it's over your lethality level and you're in shock, now you're in shock and you're dying, now you're in trouble. But the sudden death of it's possible in the Broken Empires, but it's actually not that common. So, to answer your question, are players encouraged to fight, or is it too much of a risk in general? Fighting players are encouraged to fight because it's a great way to settle an argument. But there's always danger to it. but not so much danger that you would... For example, I reject the OSR mentality as applied to this game that says combat is a fail state. I reject that. I reject that out of hand. Combat is not a fail state. Combat is a fun state, but it's also a dangerous state. So only engage in that particular kind of fun if you're willing to accept the consequences. Okay. All right. Roll Rapide, is there a speed reference list for maneuvers? Well, as you will see in the book, right now, this is the description of the maneuvers, and then we'll get to this, which tells you all of them. And here you can see what they are and their cost. And this truncated information will be on the GM screen for sure, possibly also on the Loom of Fate, but we will see. Okay, let's get back to it. Combat isn't just about causing damage to your opponent. It's as much about exploiting momentary weaknesses in their defense to seize a tactical advantage. I've already explained what combat maneuvers are. They all have SL requirements. There's universal maneuvers, which anybody can do, and then there's maneuvers based on the weapon you're using, which have particular costs, which you would have written in your character sheet. But you have to not earn them. you have to roll well enough to achieve them. So if it costs 3 SLs, let's say, to drive someone back out of the zone, to perform the drive back maneuver, that means your initial attack roll has to have generated 3 SLs before the defender, because there's something called degree of success, which the defender reduces the quality of the attacker's hit. That does not apply to the combat maneuver. It only applies to the damage. So if I hit you with 3 SLs and you defend with 1 SL, my DOS, my degree of success, is 2, and that'll apply when it comes to damage. It does not reduce the combat maneuver I can do. I can still choose a 3 SL hit. If I roll 6 SL, I can pick any maneuver that's 6 or less, which is going to be most of them. Okay. Critical benefits. If you do critical, you get 2 maneuvers, which is very cool. This maneuver is based on DOS as an edge case, which we're not going to go into here. So the combat maneuvers are these. Unbalance. Unbalance means you catch your opponent off guard, and he's minus 20 to his next action, basically. This is 1 SL, which means that even if you successfully hit and he successfully defends, the minimum you can do, as long as you get 1 SL, you're going to, you're going to be able to unbalance him. So there's very, very few cases where you hit and the defend and nothing happens. In the vast majority of cases, you're going to get at least 1 SL. There are some cases where you absolutely tie and you tie with 0 SLs, but it's very, very rare. So most of the time, even if you do damage to him, right? Even if you can't get past his armor or something, you still unbalance him. So you set him up for the next thing, either against you or your friend or whatever the case is. Oh, Knight's the last call. You are just being too generous here. Is shock like... Thanks for the donation, buddy. Is shock like Hackmaster's Threshold of Pain? No, shock is more like Harnmaster's shock rules. But they're executed differently. In Harnmaster... Well, we'll talk about that when we get to wins. Okay. So, drive back. You force your foe to yield ground, which means you push your enemy into another zone. This has many, many different tactical ramifications, especially if that zone is rough, because now he's got to make an athletics roll or else he falls prone. But it's also a great way to get out of a mob combat. If you are outnumbered, like there's 3 guys on you, and you drive back one of the enemies, you can drive that one enemy out of the zone and the others don't follow. And you don't have to do any special withdrawal or they don't get free attacks or anything like that. So it's a really slick little tactic, but it keeps the combat moving around the board, which is what we want. We want interesting, dynamic, mobile combats as much as possible. Lock prevents an opponent from tactically retreating. If you've got a guy that you're trying to capture, let's say, and you don't want him to get away, one of the things you can do is you can lock him up, which means he cannot tactically retreat. Pierce armor, if you're up against a guy with heavy armor, it only works on people with heavy armor. That is basically anything past leather. So reinforced leather, chain, scale, mail, or plate. Or chain and mail are the same. What am I saying? But if you're up against someone with heavier armor, you can basically find the weak spot in the armor and pierce the armor. And that's 4 SLs. Now, these ones, choose location, circumvent, shield, disarm, and trip. These are all based on the weapon you're using. Each weapon has different costs based on the weapon. And again, that's all in the gear chapter, but on your character sheet, it's right there by the weapon. So it's not something you have to go, wait, what does it cost to disarm with a broadsword? No, it's right there. So choose location is pretty obvious. If you hit him in the body, but you actually want to hit him in the left arm or the head or the leg or whatever, you just choose location, and there it is. Circumvent shield. Because a shield provides basically universality of armor points, the only way to get around it is to circumvent it or to destroy it, which we'll get to in a second. Circumvent shield is very, very useful with a guy with a shield. Disarm. You have to hit them in the arm, which means it's actually not that common. Because disarming someone is not that common. It actually doesn't happen that much. But if you do manage to strike them in a weapon location, which is an arm, and not the detailed location, just the general. Remember, detailed hit locations they're just for flavor. But if you hit them in the arm, you can disarm them. You can even disarm someone with a shield, but it's way more expensive. So it's plus 3 SL. So normally, let's say your disarm is 3, right? Costs you 3 to disarm. If you hit them on the left arm where they have the shield, theoretically, you can disarm that. You kind of get up and cut the straps or whatever, but it's way more expensive. It would be 6 SL. So it's a much better hit required in order to do that. Trip, same thing. You got to hit the guy in the leg. But with these, there's no saving throw. There's no resistance to this. If you have won the exchange and you have sufficient SLs to be able to trigger this maneuver, you've already won the exchange. They don't get to resist this again. Now, there's a couple of exceptions to that, which we'll come to. But that's choose location, circumvent, shield, disarm, and trip. Then we get shield bash. This is universal. If you have a shield, you can smash somebody and knock them prone. Cleave shield. If you have a two-headed weapon with the cleave shield trait, you can try and smash their shield instead to destroy it. It's another very useful way of getting around somebody's shield. And then, this is a great one. This is my favorite. Compel surrender. Heavily inspired by Mithras. You force a disadvantaged enemy to surrender. They do get a resistance to this. There's a funky little calculation to do that. It looks more complicated than it is. But basically, you force them to surrender, but they have to be disadvantaged as determined by the GM. What does that mean? Depends on the enemy, depends on the context of the battle. But if they are, and you have 3 SLs, and you use your maneuver to compel surrender, they do get a standard willpower roll, and it is modified by the quality of your attack roll against their defense, which is the DOS. So the better the attack, you don't cause any damage with this. It's basically like putting the sword to the throat, right? You don't cause any damage with this, but the better the attack, the more impressive the attack, the harder it is for them to make their willpower. And if they fail, they throw down their weapons. Hey, don't kill me, man. Or whatever, right? And then grapple. In classic D&D 3.5 tradition, grapple is ridiculously complex. It's really not that complex. But grapple is one of those things that you kind of need to know a few things. And I'll tell you why. This is a very important thing. A dagger normally is, it does 1 damage, right? 1 plus your degree of success. Not much. But against a foe who is prone or against a foe in a grapple, the dagger gains piercing, which is armor piercing of 5. It ignores 5 points of armor if you are in a grapple, or if the guy's prone. So if you're a guy up against a guy in plate, one of the best things you can do is knock him prone if you can, and then pull your dagger and use that on him, which kind of reflects a little bit historically how you dealt with guys in plate, right? So also in a grapple. If you're in a grapple, you can pull a dagger. So there's all kinds of cool little rules in here about trying to draw the dagger against the other guy and doing all this stuff, and it's all very cool and awesome. Okay, so that were the maneuvers right there. That were the maneuvers. Let's go to the chat, see where we're at. All right, what are we? Where are we here? Where are we? Pitbull. Is choose location into disarm legal? As long as you have the SLs, yeah, but that would require a critical, because you only get 2, or you only get 1 maneuver on a regular success, but if you get a critical success, you get 2 maneuvers. So absolutely, you could choose location, arm, and then disarm, as long as your Your SLs can cover the cost of either of those. You don't have to spend SLs. You don't reduce your damage by taking a maneuver. They're completely separate, right? That's a point of confusion with a lot of people. You say, oh, well, I've rolled 5 SLs. And it's 3 SLs to drive him back, so I guess I only have 2 SLs left for damage? No. You have 5 SLs left for damage, but it's reduced by the enemy's defense, right? So, again, it's one of those little mental hitches that once you get, you're like, oh, yeah, right, fine, and then it's fine. Okay. This is all awesome. Very glad to see all these tactics. Good. Yes, Josh, daggers are badass in very particular and specific situations. Ricardo, can armor and weapons take damage and break apart? Yes, there is something you can do, and this is a very narrative thing. I will say this is again evidence of sim light. This is kind of a narrative thing. If you're struck and you have a shield, you can choose after the damage comes in, and you know what this wound's going to do. You can choose to split the shield. You can go, and take it. And it shatters the shield. No harm comes to you. But then your shield's gone. Now, this is not like old D&D where you see a lot of house rules where you have the shield splitting rule where, oh, you split the shield and now it's gone. In D&D, what the shield did was basically make you 10% harder to hit in most cases because the shield typically gives +2 to your armor class. In the Broken Empires, a shield can save your life, not just through splitting it, but just by virtue of having an extra 4 armor points against every incoming attack, unless they circumvent it. That's huge. Shields are awesome. Shield and spear, it's the combination of champions for thousands of years, and there's a reason for it. So you can choose to do that, but then you're without your shield. So it's an act of desperation. You can also choose to sunder the armor. If you get hit, you could choose to sunder the armor, so the armor gets damaged and destroyed. Not destroyed entirely, because you can then repair it, but it's basically useless. So again, yes, it's an act of desperation, because you've saved yourself from that hit, but now you are completely unprotected. So, tough choices. This game is entirely about players making difficult choices and trade-offs. Okay. What's the difference between lock and grapple? Grapple is I'm tackling you and I'm wrestling with you. Lock is it's a term we use in fencing basically, or sword fighting, where you're basically locking up the fighter's defense so he can't withdraw from you. So it's a very different thing. When you lock someone, you're preventing them from making a fighting withdrawal. If you're grappling with them, you're wrestling with them. Okay. So where were we here? That was our maneuvers. Now we get into the final section of the combat chapter, which is situational rules. And this is the big hodgepodge. This is all the things we tried to think about to cover all of the edge cases we possibly can, right? Attacking a prone opponent, being prone, combat maneuver costs against bigger enemies, right? Larger enemies. Some maneuvers are just impossible to do or they're more expensive to do. Cover, right? Cover is basically, if you have cover, it's -20. Damaging objects, this is a real edge case, but it's there. In all the years I've been running games, I think someone has tried to damage an object once in 45 years. So it's an edge case, but it's there. It's all there. Environmental effects, fighting from a higher elevation. Fighting with might, which is your unarmed skill, versus an armed opponent, is a -20. Fighting with the offhand is a -20. Morale and ferocity, right? So enemies have a ferocity, which is their morale. Basically, under what circumstances are they going to break? This is separate from compel surrender, by the way, but related. And I go into more of this in the bestiary. Mounted combat. Mounted combat's cool. It's really good if you have a lance and you charge someone, you can just kill someone. But if someone sets a long spear or a long spear against you or a pike against you, you could be in big trouble because now that pike does 10 damage against you. It's brutal. And you might fall off your horse. Outnumbering, as I said, it's +20 if you're outnumbering somebody. Now, preparing the battlefield, this is my favorite. I love this. This was inspired by something I added to the One Ring when I was running that campaign. Prepare the battlefield. Prepare the battlefield. Prepare the battlefield means if the party has adequate time to prepare the area in which they expect to fight by setting an ambush, they may attempt to prepare the battlefield, which means they can make one appropriate skill roll, whatever that is. The GM has final say, but creative use of skills is encouraged. On a successful roll, the character creates a pool of favor. Favor is normally it's used as resolve. Resolve is an aspect of the character that allows you to draw upon favor. Favor is the closest thing to a meta currency in the game that we have, but it's very much based on the character. Your resolve allows you to spend resolve to gain SLs on things and stuff like that. That's all explained in the core rules chapter. But if you prepare the battlefield, you basically create, I guess if you were talking in Fate terms, the game Fate, you would say you're creating a condition or an aspect. You're adding an aspect that anybody can use. It's kind of that idea, except it's very specific. So you make a roll and you create a pool equal to 1 + 1 per 2 SLs earned. So if you rolled 4 SLs on that skill, that's a total of 3 favor in that zone. Can be used by anybody to increase. Favor is used typically as a +10 per favor, up to +30 max, right, from any source. So if I was using 2 points of favor, I would get +20 to whatever I'm doing, as long as I can sort of narratively justify how I'm using that favor. So in this case, if you can narratively justify how you're using the battlefield preparations in whatever skill you're using, which is typically an attack skill, but not necessarily, then you can draw upon that favor and spend it, but then once it's spent, it's gone, right? So, for example, the party's defending their position at a ruined tower. There's a bunch of brigands coming to them, so they prepare. Simon's player. Oh, and by the way, you will see that all of the examples in this entire book are based on the characters in Me, Myself, and Die, because of course they are. So, Simon's player describes setting snares and camouflage traps around the tower entrance. He rolls survival and gets 3 SLs, granting a pool of 2 favor for use in that zone. Any party member fighting there may draw from that pool for any roll, as long as they describe how it incorporates Simon's traps. Lovely narrativism right there. Meanwhile, Arn's player describes dragging the remains of old ale barrels from the tower's cellar and stacking them across the boulder-strewn path leading up to the entrance, creating an improvised barricade. He rolls craft practical. Oh, that should be these. I just realized these skills have to be de-italicized. In the examples, he rolls craft practical and scores 4 SLs, generating 3 favor for that zone. Anyone fighting there can spend these favor points to represent the barrels, slowing or hindering enemies, granting +10 per favor used. I love this, because if the players have time to do something interesting, they can do something interesting. Reach, I talked about how you gain +10 to combat skill rolls per point of the difference in reach. And if you decide to use a lethal weapon to deal non-lethal damage, it's -10. But your wounds are now non-lethal. Okay. There is an option right at the end here. Quick resolution. This is right out of Burning Wheel. This is basically saying, okay, do you really want to take the time to do all of these rolls with these fights if you don't think it's quote-unquote important in the moment? Then you don't have to. Just make an opposed roll. And if you win, you get what you want. This is basically what it comes down to. Now, I don't normally use this because you're throwing away the entire chapter. You're saying, yeah, all that you don't need. But there's some cases where you don't want to be bogged down in all of the detail because it just doesn't matter. I can't tell you what the situations are going to be. Only you and your GM are going to know. But when you have that, you have this option to just basically think of it as low-level resolution, right? You're zooming out from the gory details in favor of a quick outcome. We can always zoom back into the high res and add in all the juicy woundy bits to savor the evisceration of our enemies. But it's all about pace. And then there's an example of that there. So that's the combat chapter right there. And as I say this, I do want to bring up the combat chapter in my Google Doc because I noticed a mistake with my italics, so I'm just going to open that up so I remind myself to fix that thing. But the chapter is 20 pages, 18 pages, something like that. Maybe that's wrong. Not crazy complicated. Or maybe you think it is. It's not, though, because most of the stuff in that combat chapter, it's a lot of edge case stuff, or it's a lot of stuff that's not going to come up all the time. But it's all there, just in case it does come up. Oh, I see what happened here. All right, let me make this little adjustment so that I don't forget, because this will drive me crazy if I do this. There we go. Great. Okay, enough of that. So let us go back to the chat and see where we're at. Speaking of environment, can you drive back an opponent into a wall or down a stair? Absolutely. If those zones are detailed with that kind of information, then absolutely. There's a rule in the combat chapter that says environmental effects, which could be anything at all that the GM decides. There's also in the GM section, I talk about how you can use zone descriptors that the players can draw upon. It's kind of like using favor, but it's actually less complicated than that. So yes. Hell yeah, this rules. I think you meant these rules. It looks amazing. Thank you for sharing it with us. My pleasure. So, do you have any questions about what you've seen? I'm sure you have a million that you haven't already asked. Lots. I've got lots. No, I don't have lots of time. I have no time. What is the rule setting ratio for those 500 pages? The setting, I don't know. Maybe the setting takes up a lot because we detail everything in the world. So maybe 80 pages? Ballpark, maybe. But the setting also has a bunch of extra stuff in there, like weather tables and calendar systems and all that kind of stuff. So there's lots of useful stuff. Now, if you're not using the World of Broken Empires, you'll just ignore all that. I hope you don't, though, because we put a lot of work into it. And at the very least, I hope that you gain inspiration from the stuff that we provide in there, or it becomes useful tools. Like, that's the thing, too. Like, I know not all of you are going to love everything about this game because that's just the way it works. But my true hope is that you find... Well, my true hope is that you love the game and play it as it is. But I know that's not going to happen for everybody. So at the very least, if you buy this book and you see like, oh my God, the travel chapter is amazing. All of these incredible random travel tables and all of the different events that can happen. It's so amazing. Or even like, look at the name tables at the back of this book, or look at all of the... I'm really trying to create a book that goes above and beyond just being a role-playing game. Like, I want it to be a source of inspiration, but also a source of tools, like random tools and things. So... excuse me, I'm trying to give you as much bang for your buck as I possibly can. All right. Do you plan on hosting a Broken Empires mini campaign on the channel as you did with Blade Runner? Not at the moment, because that's way too much work. I can't even imagine that right now. It's so much work. But maybe one day. We'll see. Time to talk about wounds? Possibly. I mean... I probably should go because it's been an hour and a half. But I'll tell you what, if you guys are interested, I'll come back and do a wounds. I'll do a wounds chapter. But I'll tell you what else I'm going to do right now. I will at the very least show you the first page. I love this picture. This was done by one of our guys. I absolutely adore this picture. Everything going on in this picture, to me, this is the Broken Empires. The humanity in this image, the impending conflict, the brutality, the lethality, the danger, the atmosphere, everything. To me, I just love this picture. But as you can see, the wounds chapter is very much structured like the other one is, with our keywords and all this stuff. And then we get into all this wonderful stuff here. But... let's save that for another time, because that'll be another hour and a half. So I will answer a few more questions before I go here. How do degree of success and the Defender's SLs affect combat? Well, that's what I was trying to explain to the whole thing. When I attack you, if I succeed, I'm going to succeed with a number of success levels. Then you defend. Your success levels will reduce my success levels to create the DOS, the degree of success. The degree of success determines the damage. I add the DOS to my base weapon damage, and that will determine the damage that comes in. It does not affect the combat maneuver. That you resolve first. As I showed you at the very first page of this, on the combat round sequence, you roll initiative, each combat takes a turn, attacker makes an opposed roll versus the defender. If the attacker wins, choose and apply a qualifying combat maneuver, and then you deal with the DOS and damage from that point. All right. You've drawn from decades of RPG systems, that's for sure. What did you intentionally leave out to keep Broken Empires unique? Hit points, classes, and levels. Now, that doesn't make it unique, but it does take it out of a certain realm of game that I appreciate but don't really love, which is the D20-based games, the D&D style games, the OSR style games. Never been a fan of class and level. I understand the utility, and I understand why people are attracted to them. It's an easy access point. It's an easy entry to the game. But for me, I just don't like them. They're too limiting. They limit what I can do, and I want a game where I don't mind limitations at the beginning, but I want a game where I can expand any direction I want as long as I work for it. Mithras, RuneQuest, Dragonbane, these are all games that are skill-based that allow you to branch out however you want as long as you're able to justify it in-game. I think that's far more satisfying. Levels, I also find artificial and kind of silly. I don't like the idea of, and again, I understand their utility and I understand why people use them, but for me, I don't like exploding hit points over the course of levels. I don't like zero to hero. I don't like that stuff. Again, it's not that I don't like it and I think it's bad. It's just, it's not my style. It's not my preferred style. I've played it and I will play it again and I'll gladly run it. Don't get me wrong. I love all the games, but it's just not my preferred style. And hit points. Hit points are an abstraction I do not care for, which is why in the Broken Empire there are individual wounds. And when I do the wounds video, I will go into great depth about what that means and the repercussions of having individual wounds and how you heal them and what immediate effects they have and how they might become infected and all of these wonderful things. Do you believe this system would be good for narration like your seasons? As story generating as Ironsworn. Any game is story generating. As long as you have a character who is pursuing their goals and has to overcome obstacles to do so, that's the story. Doesn't matter what system you use at all. Don't even need an oracle necessarily, although I love oracles. I find them intensely useful. So the answer is yes. Now, would I say that the Broken Empires is the greatest solo game out there? No, because there's a lot to keep track of. And for me, and this is different from a lot of solo players, don't get me wrong, but for me, if I'm playing solo, I actually want slightly less mental load on me because I'm focused on so much already. I'm playing the character, I'm focusing on the world, I'm focusing on the enemy tactics, I'm focusing on the system, I'm focusing on all of this stuff. So I don't really want a super rules-intensive system. But there are many solo players who do want that. I think it was Sean, who's the Ironsword creator, who told me, dude, I love a rules-heavy game when I'm soloing. And I went, what? Why? He said, because I have all the time in the world to resolve it. I don't have to wait for anybody. I don't have to worry about, wasting someone else's time. It's just me. I can spend an hour doing a combat round if I want. Now, to me, that's horrifying. But to him, that's what he likes. So if you are that kind of player, you're going to love this. Believe me. I have to say it's a lot of rules, but conceptually it seems very intuitive. I can see the sequence in my head easily. Oh, that pleases me to no end. This is what I was trying to say. Thank you for that. This is what I was trying to say. The game can look daunting on the surface, but when you get down to it, it's actually, in my estimation, a lot less complex than something like a Pathfinder. It's a lot less complex than something like a Mithras. Now, I will say this. We've just talked about combat here, but this is also a game that incorporates intrigue and social rules, very detailed travel procedures, very intricate as you want them to be, magic rules, free-form magic rules. When you put all of those things together, it can be a lot. But again, you don't play a game, any game, by engaging with every system at once. It doesn't happen, right? You're engaging with the thing you're engaging with in that moment. So I think it's very intuitive. But I wrote it. But the fact that you seem to agree with me, that's very encouraging. So that's awesome. Shatterforce, does using magic in combat let you choose maneuvers, i.e. zapping an arm to disarm? Absolutely it does. You can do that as well. There's very specific guidelines in the magic chapter on how to do that. We want wounds. That came out wrong. We want the wounds chapter 2. Well, I already showed you the first page, and that will have to be enough for today. But join me next time when we will talk about wounds, because I think we will. I think people are kind of digging what we're doing here. So we'll do that as a separate video, because I'm losing my voice a little bit here. Love this. Thanks for sharing this with us today. You're very, very welcome. Very, very welcome. Wow, I made it to a live show. I need tutorials on how to run the game and making magic items. Please and thank you. Well, I will be doing a whole series of video tutorials in the coming months as the game gets closer to release to help you with just that. I want a shield rundown. Grognard, I swear to God. No, he's ending and I just got here. Well, the good news about YouTube is you can go back and watch. Amazing art for that page. Yeah, I love it too. I think it's great. Do we have an overview for ballistic combat? Well, I did kind of cover it. I mean, there's ranged attacks. That's ballistic combat, and I talked about how you defend against them. You can dodge them, or you can use a shield, but if you don't have a shield, you can't, or you have to dodge them. All kinds of stuff. Let's see. I feel it'd be difficult to keep track of the pushback maneuver. No, not at all, actually. That's one of the easiest things you can do because we use not miniatures exactly, but we use markers for the characters. Rough, super, like you should see my battle mats, they're super rough. I sketch stuff out because all that matters is I need a rough idea of where everyone else is in relation to everyone else. That's it. That's all I need. And, details of the zone. Like, is it rough? Is this filled with jagged ice or whatever? But when someone drives back someone else into another zone, we move them into the zone. And now you see where they are. That's it. That's all there is to it. If you're a purely theater of the mind person, yeah, you're going to have a little more problem with that. But I would guess that you have tools to deal with that anyway as a theater of the mind person as it is. But this is designed to have some, I don't want to say miniatures and all that stuff because it's really not, but it is designed, it's assumed you have some physical representation of the combat in front of you. Even if that's just sketching stuff out as you go, it just makes things so much easier. And it's so much cooler because it allows, it gives a visual, it gives you a visual reference without bombarding you with detail. Like, I got to tell you, this is the reason why I don't really love VTTs. This is the reason why I don't love applications like Foundry. Not because it doesn't do what it does. Well, it certainly does. It's fantastic. But for me, it kind of defeats the purpose of a role-playing game. For me, a role-playing game is an imagination exercise, not a visual graphics exercise. So when I look at, my friend Ross said this a lifetime ago, and I totally get it. He said, I don't like miniatures and terrain at the table when I'm role-playing, because when I look at a miniature, I see that guy in that room with that terrain. But I want to see my own version of it. And he's totally right. The power of the RPG is that we get to see our own version of things. So when I have a visual representation, I use bingo chips with people's names on it and an arrow that shows what direction they're facing. And I use water-sol pens on a hex grid, and I sketch things out. It's the roughest thing, but everybody loves it because you see it in your own mind. And the things we need to understand together, like how far exactly am I from that guy to be able to shoot him? What consequences mechanically does that have? Those questions are answered by that rough sketch. So I think it's a vital aspect of the game is to have some visual representation. But that's just me. Okay, Max Fury, if the defender wins the opposed roll, does the difference in SL matter? No. If the attacker, all that matters is who won. If the defender wins, then there's nothing else. He's blocked the attack or he's dodged or whatever. End of story. Again, I had riposte rules where a successful defense gain it, but it just became too much. It's just easier and better this way. Yes, do watch from the beginning. Hello, Jay. Hi, Trevor and Sel. I never say bye because I don't want to. Very clever. Very clever. Will there be printer-friendly versions of the PDFs? That is the plan, but we got to finish the main PDF first. What's the upper range of armor values for plate? The maximum value for armor is 7, and that's plate. But if you come, is that right? 7, 4, 5, yes, 7. I think. I could look it up, but I'm too lazy. So, but plate is great, right? 7 AP, huge, but really slows you down, has all kinds of skill penalties. If you get knocked prone, you're in big trouble, all that stuff. So it's straight off. But if you add that to a medium shield, which is 4 AP, that's 11 AP. That guy is a tank. But the question is, where's his plate? Because if he's wearing full plate. First of all, no one can afford that. Second of all, you're going last in every round, very likely. Third of all, don't ever get knocked on your ass because you ain't getting up again. And fourth of all, that doesn't sound right. Forgot. Fourth, I forgot. Shields are great, but they can be circumvented. Armor can be pierced. There's ways to beat those foes. When I win the opposed roll, can I forego the damage and only use the SL to use combat maneuvers? There are certain combat maneuvers that you forego damage anyway. Like if you try and compel surrender, you do not cause damage. If you try and cleave the shield, you do not cause damage. Otherwise, everything else is probably going to cause damage. Are you saying, like, I want to disarm him without causing damage? You can do that, but you can't actually avoid causing damage. It just doesn't work. But you can cause non-lethal damage, but you take a -10 penalty to your skill for that. So, yes-ish. All right. All right. Can we see a couple of weapons, how they affect combat? No, just because that chapter is one of the ones that we had to redesign because of the layout issues, and I can only show you the Google Doc, and I'm not going to do that because I'm showing you the real thing right now. So as soon as I get the real gear chapter back, I will show you that. I love games where you can pick what skills you want to be good at, like a wizard that can be in the front line due to defense skills and protection magic. Me too. Me too. Any questions for classic wizard duels? Yes and no. That'll be a magic chapter thing. Thanks, Trevor. Looks great. Looking forward to it. That's great. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat. Really enjoyed learning more about the game and your insights. Excited to see it come to life. That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you guys for joining me. Thanks for the update. Lots of hearts. Great video. This is great. I'm really glad you guys are excited. That is very important to me. Okay. All right, guys. I have to go. I gotta go. My throat. My poor throat. So thank you again. There are some things in the description if you're interested in buying stuff from the Me, Myself, and Dice store. Everything's 25% off until March 31st. Also, I've partnered with Fanatical, which is a company that does software bundles and gaming bundles, and I'm talking specifically about role-playing. Those sales are still on, so check those out. It's a good way to support the channel. And of course, if you have not bought The Broken Empires but are still interested in getting yourself a copy, you can go to thebrokenempiresrpg.com. We are still doing pre-orders all the way up until the day that we ship this off to the producers. So we have a little bit of time until that happens, so you still have time. Okay, guys, thank you so much. This was great. Thank you all for joining me, and we'll see you on the next one. I will make an announcement what that next one's going to be. It'll be soon. Because, I want to ride that wave. Ride that wave. All right, see you guys.